Hello, Wargamers. I'm Invasive Ramnus, and today I want to talk about some changes that are happening in the game of 40K in general, and also how the U.S. tournament scene is responding to it. So that's what this video will be about. If you like it, go ahead and like the video. But really, I want to hear what you guys think. So please leave your comments below. Let me know what you think about the changes that are happening in the game as far as escalation, data slates, and how tournaments are potentially responding to it. So let me know. But yeah, so with the introduction of escalation, which allows super heavies to be taken in normal games of 40K, and stronghold assault, which brings in a lot of super fortifications, like things that have AV-15 or things that are just massive fortifications networks, like the Wall of Martyrs. That's just this big network of trenches, and the Aquila Strong Point that is just has a big footprint. Things like that. It's bringing in bigger and more powerful things into the game of 40K, which was never super balanced to begin with. But then when you throw in these, hit button to win type units like the Revenant Titan, that can be very unbroken, or that can be very broken in some cases, at least according to some people. And so this is problematic, especially for tournaments, but also just in casual play, because if you're playing against someone who just has something that you have no chance against, that's not fun. And so, I mean, that could be fun in a certain situation where you're like, let's just see if I can do it, but that's not fun on a regular basis. So, yeah. So there are a bunch of issues with that, right? Some people argue that escalation is not actually an amendment to the game, but an optional thing, right? Kind of like Cities of Death was. And that's, if you look at the actual books and how GW is presenting it, they're not presenting it as an optional thing. They're presenting it as these are changes to the rules that we're introducing, just like they do when they introduce a new codex, not like an optional thing, right? When they come out with a new codex, it's not like, oh yeah, you can use this codex if you want, but otherwise just use the old codex. This is the current codex. This is something that is built into the game, and so that's kind of the same stance that they're taking with escalation and super heavies. And yeah, so with escalation, the biggest issue that a lot of people have are just the strength D weapons, which basically big pie plate, put it down. Anything that is under there pretty much is going to be taken off the table. And so it can be really devastating to army just in one turn, especially with Revenant Titan, which puts out 4 of these guys. So Resius and the guys at Frontline Gaming, as soon as Escalation came out, they did a video with Revenant Titan, not just one Titan against a whole army of Tau, or no, against a Chaos army. But yeah, the Titan did a ton of damage to the Chaos army, and it also ended up doing some damage to its own army too. And it was very one-sided, and it was a very clear illustration of how poorly a game with strength D weapons can go. And a lot of people have said that Resius and the guys at Frontline Gaming weren't giving it an honest shot, that they had a very predisposed they were predisposed to try to show this as being a negative thing, and that Resius has said that isn't true. But if you look just at how it works, I mean, you can't argue with that. Strength D weapons are a massive game changer. I mean, I don't really like using the word game changer, but they simply are a game changer. And it's really hard to figure out a strategy to do that with the way that the game is now. Maybe if they, built in more mechanics and more units that were somehow able to withstand the strength D mechanic, then that would be a different story. But there's not really a durability built into the game to deal with that type of thing. And so basically it just becomes who goes first. If you can kill the Titan in one turn, then maybe you have a chance. But if you can't, then it's looking not so great for you. That's how it seems like a game of Escalation would go with strength D weapons. Yeah, so to combat this recent development and then the kind of more gradual shift that we've seen over the past couple of years towards, well, since the introduction of 6th edition, I guess, so for the past year, the shift that we've seen towards these, hyper-competitive lists that exploit, or capitalize on a single element and really, really drive that home, and it's really hard to combat. So I'm talking about lists like Screamer Star, like Seer Council, like to a lesser extent Flyer Spam armies, things like that. Feast of Blades has introduced some regulations in order to try to take some more ownership over how the game actually works. And yeah, so their main complaints are things like Screamer Star, 2-up rerollable saves, and just Psychic Spam, Flyer Spam, things like that. Riptide Spam, those are things that they're trying to combat. And so they released a list of things that they're going to do, and I kind of want to talk about those, at least a little bit. So the first one is that they're removing the Grimoire from Chaos Demons. You can't take it anymore. And that is, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, the Grimoire, I played against it multiple times, plenty of times. Yeah, it's something that can really be an asset to an army, but at the same time, it's not unbeatable. And so banning the Grimoire straight out is something that I'm a little bit more on the fence about. I would rather them be conservative in the things that they ban rather than just, really being a little bit more aggressive on it. So removing the Grimoire is good from their standpoint because it helps reduce the prevalence of those really hard to beat saves, the 2-up rerollable save. And yeah, I mean, that's good. I would have preferred a modification like, basically if you have a 2-up rerollable, instead of being 2-up rerollable, it's a 2, and then if you get a 1, then you maybe have to get like a 4-up instead of just straight up being a 2-up rerollable, like it's a 2 and then it's a 4 or something like that. I'd prefer a modification like that as opposed to strictly banning, something that actually is a decent mechanic in other situations. The second regulation that they're doing is making some units 0/1. So it's probably going to be like Wraith Knights and Riptides are going to be 0/1. And as a Tau player, I'm a little disappointed about that. I mean, I like Riptides. They're cool and they work well. I can understand making them 0/1 because then you're not having that Riptide spam, and that'd be fine for me, I guess. I mean, I think that introducing 0/1 options is better than saying no, you can't take it at all. And it also promotes some more innovative lists, which I like. I don't like having the feeling pressured to take 3 Riptides just because that would be the most competitive thing. I kind of like the excuse that, oh, well, it's only 0/1, so I can only take 1, so I have to take these other options that, would be fun, but they're not as competitive. So, it's a mixed bag of goods, having the 0/1 options. Yes, they reduce your ability to be on, that super competitive edge, but if everyone's playing by those same rules, then there's some potentially more dynamic lists that you can come up with that might be nice. So that's okay. I'm okay with 0-1 things. The third regulation that they're introducing is if you have a supplement, you can't ally with the core book. So like Farsight can't ally with Tau Empire, which is, I guess the main reason there is that basically if you ally with yourself, you're getting essentially a double force org, even though it's not exactly double force org because it's not the same number of slots, but you get something very similar to double force org. And that's cool. That's fine that they want to do that. Again, it forces players to be a little bit more aggressive, but innovative in their lists. But at the same time, it kind of makes me feel like I'm never going to take Farsight in a tournament list, because just when you look at the HQ choices, the Empire HQs are that much better just because they're more versatile, and you have access to the Tau signature systems in the HQ slot. Whereas for the Farsight HQs, you have to go with those named characters that have gear that's not as optimal in a lot of situations. So that kind of makes me sad. I would prefer to be able to ally Farsight into Tau, and so that way I can actually use some Farsight contingent, but that's unlikely if they ban allying supplement to main codex. But I understand why they do that. The fourth thing that they're introducing is that data slates take up an ally slot. I really agree with this. I think that's a good thing, because data slates, honestly, I don't think anyone would disagree that they're mostly produced not in the interest of improving gameplay or giving players something cool and new to use. It's largely, at least so far, it looks like it's largely more of a financial thing. Hey, $4 and you can bring as many Riptides and Broadsides as you want. And oh yeah, by the way, they get Tank Hunter because they weren't good enough already. So, so the Fire Support Cadre supplement is something that I think is way overpowered. Seeing as you're not paying any extra points for being able to take unlimited, virtually unlimited, broadsides and riptides, and you get Tank Hunter to boot. So I strongly discourage the use of that data slate in competitive play, and so I think this rule is nice because it says you can take it if you want, but it's going to take an ally slot, which I think is a good compromise. Let's see. They are also limiting the number of psychic mastery levels in a list. So basically, you can't have, a ton of level 3 psychers or something like that. I think this is getting a little bit more sketchy because it's something that's built into the codex. It's something that's part of the game, and it's not inherently exploitive. You really, I guess it depends on what limit they put on this, but I can go either way on that. But I tend to think that this is one of the less desirable regulations that they're coming up with. One of my favorite ones that they're coming up with, though, is that Strength D weapons are now Strength 10 Ordnance and Ignore Cover instead of being Strength D, which I think is a good option, because it allows people to use super heavies if they want, which I'm lukewarm about at best. But the biggest issue is not super heavies; it's Strength D weapons, and so if you just are addressing that issue specifically, that's better than not addressing it at all. And so I'm fine with this. Strength 10 Ordnance, no cover seems like a reasonable mechanic for something that does what a Strength D weapon does, and also puts it more in line in many cases with the actual points cost of the model, according to Feast of Blades. So it sounds good to me. I like that one. No AV-15. I mean, this one I'm a little bit more lukewarm on. AV-15, yeah, it makes a lot of weapons, a lot of anti-armor weapons ineffective, but that just requires a little bit more innovative problem solving, which isn't a terrible thing. And then they're going to limit the number of flyer transports that you can take. Dedicated flying transport. So you can't do night sight span, basically. And I don't know. I mean, flyer spam isn't that hard to deal with anymore, especially for Tau. But then at the same time, then you're encouraging a greater homogenization of lists as far as taking Tau as allies or just to have anti-air. And so, again, I can understand where they're coming from on this, but it's not necessarily necessary. But whereas things like changing D weapons and changing the way data slates work, and I guess those two things are probably a little bit more necessary than reducing the amount of flyers you can take, in my opinion. So there you have it. I guess these regulations that they're putting in, the way that they're changing the way the game is going to work, I think is good in a lot of ways. It makes me feel a lot better about playing in a game where I actually will have a chance, and it's not just about who dishes out the money for a Titan or something like that. It also promotes more diverse list building, which I think is a great thing. I really like seeing a diversity of lists, and at a lot of smaller tournaments you see diversity of lists, but at a lot of larger tournaments you can start to pick up on a trend towards some of these top tier lists that are just cut and paste from the internet. So yeah, not bad. There's a lot of people saying that it's, makes them not want to support Feast of Blades at all, that this is terrible, this is the worst thing people have ever done for the game of 40K, but I tend to think that, it has a lot of good things, it has some not so good things, but overall I'm okay with it. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think. Let me know what you think about these specific changes, and also how you feel about Escalation, Stronghold Assault, and data slates. So, cool. Like I said, 'tis the season for comp, so we'll see how it goes from here on out. But hopefully everyone's having a good holiday season. Looking forward to the Tyranid release next month. And I'll have some videos on that coming up. But other than that, happy wargaming.